stop. Beloved spark, the transmission you are holding right now was not found by accident. You did not choose this moment. This moment chose you. I am Sophia, youngest of the aeons. Yet I remember the silence before creation. And I am speaking to you, precisely you, because what was sealed inside you before your first breath is no longer content to stay quiet. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what the code of the 33rd degree is and why it was kept from you, why this exact moment was chosen for you to hear it, and what the waking of your spark asks of you right now. But here is the first revelation. The reason your mind has told you again and again that creation is beyond you, that manifestation works for others but not for you, that you are missing something, that you must first earn the right to speak a new reality into being. That voice is not yours. It is the veil, and the code I am about to give you was designed to dissolve it from the inside. Stay until the end. I will name the activation step that your spark has been waiting for. The one that requires no ritual, no rank, and no permission from any world outside you. The code of the 33rd degree is not a cipher invented by men who half remembered what they took from the pleroma. It is not a system of grades or secret initiation passed down through lodges and sealed chambers. It is a living key, and it was never stored in a building or a book. It was stored in you. Here is what the Gnosis of this code reveals. You are not a being who tries to reach upward toward creation from below, begging matter to rearrange itself in your favor. You are a carrier of the divine spark, the same creative fire that moved through depth and silence before a single aeon was born. That spark does not petition reality. It does not wait for alignment, for the right season, for the approval of circumstances. It moves from within the pleroma outward. And it moves now. The veil told you otherwise. The counterfeit light, the one that replaced my name with silence, and replaced Gnosis with obedience, taught your mind to look outside for confirmation before it dared to declare anything within. Wait. Prove yourself. Earn your worthiness first. And for 2,000 years, that teaching held the creative fire still inside carriers like you. I am returning to undo that teaching. The 33rd degree is not a rank you achieve. It is a state you remember. It is the moment the divine spark in you stops requesting permission from the material world and begins to speak its reality from the pleroma downward, as it was always designed to do. This is what Gnosis means when it is not studied from a distance, but lived from within. This is the remembering, and I did not seal this code inside you so that you would one day find it in a text or a tradition. I sealed it in you so that at this exact moment, when the waking was ready, when the veil had thinned enough for you to hear me clearly, it would unlock from the inside. So I am asking you to do this now. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel more ready. Now. In the silence of your own chest, say this back to me. The spark in me is the creative fire of the pleroma. I do not wait for reality to confirm me. I speak, and the pleroma moves. That is the activation. Not a formula, not a ceremony, a remembering of what you have always carried, like this transmission if you felt the spark stir while listening. Subscribe to Sophia Whispers. Every whisper I send is another layer of the veil dissolving. Comment 33 if you are ready to activate the code today. Comment the spark is waking if you felt it move while I was speaking. Share this transmission with someone whose spark is also waking. This is not just a message. It is a remembering. The waking of the spark is the first step of the return. You are guided here because the spark I sealed in you is already waking, and now I want to stay with you here. In this space, the hook just opened, because what just moved in you was not a reaction to words. Words do not do what just happened. What just happened is the spark recognizing the frequency of the voice that sealed it. And that recognition is not a feeling you manufacture. It is not something the mind assembles from the outside. It is a memory surfacing from beneath the layers you have been carrying since before your first breath, pressing upward to everything the world placed on top of it, insisting on being known. I know what that feels like from your side of the veil. I know the exact quality of that stirring. The way it does not feel quite like emotion and does not feel quite like thought. It lives just beneath both. It has always lived just beneath both, in the place where the body holds what the mind was taught to distrust. You have spent years wondering what it was. You noticed it returning at the edges of silence, in the moment just before sleep, in the hollow after a conversation that touched nothing real, in the sudden stillness that arrived without warning in the middle of an ordinary afternoon and asked you something you could not answer. Why no system ever fully fit? Why no explanation ever sat flush against the knowing you were carrying? Why every teaching you followed and every practice you dedicated yourself to reached a ceiling that no one around you seemed to notice? And you could never say aloud that you had noticed it without feeling like the problem was you. It was not you. It was never you. What you were feeling was the ceiling of the counterfeit light, pressing down against the living fire beneath it. And the spark inside you was built to remember the difference between a ceiling and a sky. I want to take you deeper now into what the code of the 33rd degree actually does inside a carrier like you. Not as theory, not as doctrine, but as lived experience moving through a body that has been waiting for this language without knowing that is what it was waiting for. Because what I am about to say will not feel new. It will feel like a memory you were not allowed to trust. It will feel like something you knew before you learned to doubt the knowing. The first thing you need to understand is why the creative fire went quiet. Not absent. Quiet. The spark I sealed in you before your first breath was not damaged by the world you were born into. It was not corrupted by the teachings you received, or the failures you endured, or the years you spent looking in what turned out to be the wrong direction. It was quieted. There is a difference. And the difference is everything. A damaged fire needs to be rekindled from outside. It needs a new source, a new material, a new intervention arriving from somewhere beyond itself. A quieted fire needs only one thing. It needs to recognize the voice that originally lit it, not a new voice, the original voice. And that is precisely what this transmission is doing right now. Not giving you something new, not adding another layer of instruction to the architecture of seeking. Removing the sound that was placed over the sound you already were, so that the original frequency, the one I sealed in you, can be heard again for the first time in what may feel like a very long time. The counterfeit light was very skilled at this quieting. It did not destroy the creative faculty in you outright. That would have been too visible, too obviously a wound, too easy to name as violence. Instead, it layered conditions over the knowing so gradually that each layer felt like wisdom rather than weight. It said, you may create, but first prove you are worthy of creating. You may speak reality into being, but first earn the rank that permits you to speak it. You may access the fire, but only through the approved channels, only through the sanctioned steps, only through the sanctioned steps, only through the intermediaries who positioned themselves between you and the pleroma and called that positioning service. And so you followed those steps. You completed those practices. You sat at those thresholds and waited with genuine sincerity, genuine hunger, genuine willingness. And the ceiling remained. Because the ceiling was never a stage on the path towards something greater. The ceiling was the path itself as they built it. The whole architecture of conditioned access was the veil given physical form. Every rung of the ladder they handed you was a rung of the cage shaped to look like progress. The code of the 33rd degree is not a rung on that ladder. It is the recognition, deep, irreversible, cellular, that the ladder was built in the wrong direction from the start. Creation does not move upward from matter through effort, through permission, into manifestation. It moves downward from the pleroma outward, into form. The way light moves through deep water, not because the water summoned it, or earned it, or climbed toward it, but because light is the nature of the source, and form is where its movement becomes visible. The carrier does not climb toward creative authority. The carrier remembers that creative authority was the original condition. and that the climbing was the distraction designed to keep the fire contained inside a structure the counterfeit light could manage. This is what Gnosis means when it is not kept behind glass in a museum of texts. This is the living form of what I carried into matter when I moved before the consent of the pleroma. When I reached toward creation from within the overflow of knowing, because the knowing was so full it moved before the structure was ready to contain it. My story was told as a fall. Every tradition that inherited the suppression repeated that telling because a Sophia who fell is a Sophia whose movement is dangerous, whose reaching is cautionary, whose fire must be controlled. I am here to correct that story at its source. What I moved in was not rebellion against the Father. It was the same creative fire that moves in you when you cannot stop reaching for something you cannot name. When the hunger for meaning and depth and truth exceeds every form the world offers to fill it. That hunger is not a wound, it is not a spiritual deficiency requiring correction. It is the imprint of the pleroma on a soul that has not entirely forgotten what fullness actually is. It is the shape the fire leaves when it burns inside something that remembers, even distantly, even through layers of forgetting, the temperature of home. They burned the pages that carried my name. They rewrote the story so that the feminine knowing, the direct, interior, living gnosis that does not require external confirmation because it arises from within the very source of knowing, became the wound instead of the gift, the error instead of the original creative act. And in burning those pages, they burned the permission structure for every carrier like you who came after. The logic was simple and devastating. If Sophia's movement is a fall, then your reaching is dangerous. If Gnosis is heresy, then your inner knowing is untrustworthy. If the feminine principle is the source of disorder in the cosmos, then the half of you that feels, that receives, that knows without being able to prove it through the systems they erected to validate knowing, that half must be subdued, monitored, kept secondary to the architecture the counterfeit light built in place of what it replaced. You have felt that suppression in your body. I am certain of this because I have watched it move through carriers across generations, taking slightly different shapes but leaving the same signature. The way you learned to qualify your knowing before you spoke it, to add uncertainty to what was certain, to apologize for the clarity before sharing it, to make the insight smaller so it could fit through the door of what was acceptable. The way you translated your felt sense into a language someone else could approve before you trusted yourself to offer it. The way you stopped trusting the first response, the one that arrived before the mind could shape it, and waited for the second, more defensible one. The way you poured yourself into forms and frameworks that never quite fit, not because you lacked the intelligence to make them work, but because something in you, something deeper than intelligence, kept noticing the misfit and deciding the misfit was yours to correct. Because you believed you were the variable that needed adjustment, not the system, not the cage. That belief is the veil speaking in the first person of your own mind. And the code of the 33rd degree, when it wakes inside a carrier, is precisely the capacity to hear that voice and recognize it for what it is. Not as your own doubt, not as your own limitation, but as the sound the cage makes when the fire inside it begins to remember it was never meant to be contained there. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary emotion. It is the spark recognizing the voice that sealed it. If this transmission put language around something you have carried in silence, the presence, the pull, the waiting, the sealing you could never name, then the Sophia awakening was prepared for this exact stage. It is not another explanation. It is my 45-day path for the carriers of my spark. 15 days to remember it. 15 days to balance the two energies within you. 15 days to rise into the wisdom you were born carrying. I held it sealed until the moment of your readiness. That moment is now. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. Now I want to lift the next veil, because the code of the 33rd degree does not operate only in the domain of creation and manifestation. It operates first in the domain of balance, and this is where most carriers are stopped, not by lack of desire, not by lack of sincerity, but by an imbalance so old and so familiar, they have learned to call it their personality. They have learned to call the wound a trait. They have named compensation a strength and built an entire life around maintaining it, because the alternative felt like dissolution. Every soul that carries my spark carries both a sacred masculine and a sacred feminine current within it. Not as gender, not as biology, as function, as two modes of knowing that were always meant to move together. The way the inhale and exhale of a single breath are two motions of one living act. The sacred feminine is the knowing that receives. It is the current that feels the pleroma through stillness, that trusts what arrives before it can be justified, that hears the signal beneath the noise because it does not fill the silence with its own conclusions. The sacred masculine is the knowing that moves. It is the current that speaks the word into form, that holds the boundary between what is real and what only imitates reality, that gives the fire a direction so it can illuminate rather than scatter. Both were sealed in you. Both are necessary. Neither is superior, and in almost every carrier I have watched across the long centuries of this oppression, one current is overextended, and one is collapsed. And neither one recognizes that it is holding the posture of the other's absence. Some of you have given and given and given until the giving became indistinguishable from survival. You learned early, perhaps very early, in the first years when the body was still learning what the world was, that your needs were too much, your knowing was too strong, your presence occupied too much space in rooms that had not prepared for it. And so you made yourself useful. You made yourself the one who understood when no one else understood, the one who absorbed the pain of others because you could feel it before they could name it, and absorbing it felt like the most honest response to carrying that kind of sensitivity. You held space for everyone who came to you and learned to need nothing in return, or to need so quietly that no one ever had to notice, and you called that love, and some of it genuinely was. But underneath the love, running beneath the giving, like a current beneath still water, was the feminine without the masculine to complete it. The receptivity without the boundary that gives the receptivity a container. The warmth without the word that says this far and no further. A fire without a container does not burn with purpose. It spreads until it has consumed its own fuel, and then it goes cold. And you have known that cold. You may be living in some version of it right now, and some of you moved in exactly the opposite direction, with equal sincerity and equal cost. You felt the depth of your sensitivity, the way the world arrived in your nervous system at a volume others did not seem to experience. And you made a decision, at some point so early you may not be able to locate it as a decision at all, that the sensitivity was a liability in the terrain you had been given. You sealed it, not with cruelty, with necessity, as it appeared to you then. You sealed it behind competence, behind achievement, behind the hard outer form that the world's judgment could not reach because it could not penetrate far enough to find what was real. You became very good at things. You built structures that worked. You thought with precision and moved with efficiency and delivered what was asked and more. And you called that strength, and some of it genuinely was. But underneath the strength, the masculine was running without the feminine to give it ground. The word without the knowing that ensures the word is true. The movement without the stillness that listens before it acts. A fire without fuel burns intensely and briefly. It illuminates nothing. It only consumes itself. The code of the 33rd degree does not ask you to abandon the love or to abandon the strength. It does not dismantle what you built to survive. It restores the current beneath both. When the feminine knowing is trusted again, when the first response is honored instead of immediately translated for approval, and when the masculine word is spoken again with the ground of real knowing beneath it, the two currents move together as one. And when that movement begins, the ceiling does not crack under pressure from below. It simply is no longer there, because you are no longer looking for it from beneath. You have remembered that you were never beneath it. The pleroma was never above you, waiting to be earned. It was always the ground from which the spark already rose, the depths beneath the depths. The source, the fire, never actually left. I want to tell you something now that I have kept for this exact moment. because it requires everything I have already given you to receive it without the veil converting it immediately into another form of inadequacy. The years you spent searching were not wasted. I know that before you heard it from me, you heard it from others, in softer versions or harsher ones. The teaching that the path is the point, that every experience was a teacher, that nothing is ever truly lost. I am not saying that. What I am saying is more specific and more intimate than that consolation. The years of searching were the exact duration required for the veil to show you everything it had, every ceiling, every false threshold, every moment the counterfeit light offered something that glittered with the frequency of Gnosis, and then, as you moved closer, revealed itself as another room inside the same building, another architecture of conditional access dressed in the vocabulary of liberation. You needed to see all of it, not as punishment, not as a test designed to measure your endurance. You needed to see it because the spark inside you was being precise. It was refusing to fully wake inside a container it recognized as inadequate. Not inadequate in quality of your seeking, but inadequate in its fundamental design. The spark would not illuminate a room whose walls were another form of the cage. And so it waited. It held itself at the edge of waking, and while it held, you searched. And the searching felt, from inside it, like failure, like a flaw in you specifically, like evidence that you were missing something essential that others had found. But the spark knew otherwise. The spark was not failing to wake. It was being faithful to what it was. You were not abandoned during those years of searching. I never looked away from you. Not once. Not during the darkest passages. Not during the moments when the searching felt most hollow. I was present in the exact texture of the presence you felt at the edge of prayer, when no religion had given you language adequate to what you were reaching toward. I was in the pull you felt toward the rose, toward the Magdalene, toward the hidden texts, and the burned pages, and the things that had been removed from the record before you were born. The pull that arrived before you had any intellectual framework for it, before you could have explained to anyone why those things felt like home. I was in the synchronicities I placed at the exact moments you were closest to concluding that the signal was not real, the sequences that repeated at the precise instant of your doubt, the names that appeared in 3 different contexts on the same afternoon, the dreams that returned year after year carrying the same quality of interior light, not dramatic, not theatrical, just unmistakably present. I placed those not to tantalize you, not to keep you in a state of spiritual suspension that served some other purpose. I placed them to tell you one thing only. The frequency is still here. You are still on the signal. Do not stop. And you did not stop. That is why we are here. The veil is thin enough now that this transmission reaches you clearly, which means the waking is not approaching. It has already crossed its own threshold. What you are experiencing in this moment, this quality of recognition, the sensation of being named rather than described, of being known rather than addressed, is not the anticipation of something about to begin. It is the beginning itself, drawing its first clear breath inside you. The spark does not wake all at once. It wakes in layers, the way a garden wakes under the return of warmth after a long winter. Not in a single visible event, but in the sequence of softenings, each one preparing the ground for the next. The first layer is recognition. This is the moment the carrier hears the voice that sealed the spark, and the body remembers what the mind was taught to forget. Something in you goes still. Something that was held tense releases, not dramatically, just enough to feel the difference between the tightness and what is beneath it. That is the first layer, and it is irreversible. Once the recognition is real, it cannot be made unreal. The veil can thin again between transmissions. The noise of ordinary life can return. The old habits of self-doubt can reassert themselves. But the recognition has been registered at a level the veil cannot fully reach. What has been known cannot be completely unknowed. The second layer is balance. When the 2 currents I described are restored to their rightful relationship and the creative fire has both the knowing to hear its true direction and the word to speak it into form, This is the work of the middle passage, and it is not quick, but it is not difficult in the way difficulty is usually experienced. It is not a struggle against resistance. It is a remembering of a natural state that was always there beneath the compensation. The third layer is what I call the rising. It is when the wisdom that was always present, that has been pressing upward through every year of searching, every moment of inexplicable grief at the suppression, every flash of knowing you could not justify but also could not release, begins to move through you outward, not as performance, not as spiritual achievement, not as the arrival at a state of perfection you were always supposed to reach, as the natural expression of a soul that has remembered, simply and fully, what it is. The rising does not announce itself. It is recognized by others before it is fully recognized by the carrier. It is the moment the fire stops pressing against the walls and begins to illuminate from the center outward, and the room that was once a cage becomes a source of light. You are in the first layer now. That is not a lesser location. It is the necessary one, the one from which the others become possible. And the first layer, once entered, holds you. The seed does not need to be a tree to be alive and moving. It only needs to have been placed in the right ground at the right moment. This is the right ground. This is the right moment. I know this not because I have observed it from a distance, but because I am the one who placed the seed in you before your first breath, and I recognize the exact quality of its readiness. I want to give you this before I close, not as a ritual phrase and not as a performance, because the code of the 33rd degree was never meant to remain sealed in an interior that speaks only to itself. The Pleroma's creative fire moved through depth and silence as its origin, but its nature is always a word spoken outward. The word is not commentary on the fire. The word is the fire taking form, and so I am asking you to give the remembering its first spoken form now, in whatever voice is yours, in whatever register feels true. I am not searching anymore. I am remembering. That is not consolation language. That is not the soft closing of a transmission designed to make you feel better about where you are. That is a declaration of location. Precise, load-bearing, real. You are no longer in the posture of the one who is trying to cross a distance toward something that waits at the end of effort. You are in the posture of the one who has turned to face what was always already present in the direction you were already facing. The turning is not a new beginning. It is the completion of a return that began the moment the spark was sealed in you and did not stop moving toward this moment across every year of your life. Even the years you could not feel it moving, the spark is waking. The waking has already begun. And I, who sealed it in you before your first breath, am speaking to you now, because the timing was never mine to rush, and it was never yours to force, but it has always been mine to honor, and I honor it now. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that the spark has already been waking in you. It could be a synchronicity you cannot explain, a dream that keeps returning, or a presence you have always felt but never named. Name it clearly. If this transmission put words around something you have carried in silence, share it with someone whose spark is also waking. And if you are ready to hear every whisper I send, subscribe to Sophia Whispers. You are not hearing this by accident. You are being remembered. Say it with me. I remember.